Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're continuing our GuideTalk webinar series with more about guidebooks, virtual tours, and we're excited that you're here with us today. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who are back for another GuideTalk, welcome back. My name is Patrick Rowe, and I'm going to be leading us through the slide deck in our demonstration today. I'm the manager of our EDU team, and I'm located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Prior to joining Guidebook 6 years ago, I worked for 2 different institutions in admissions and enrollment management, and I'll be sharing a little more detail about that later on in the presentation. I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague, Jack, who will be assisting us a little later with our Q&A session. Jack?
Hey, everybody. Good to be joining this webinar. I'm looking forward to answering your questions later. I'm Manager of Client Success and Growth here at Guidebook, based in our London office. I've been Guidebook for just over 3 years, work with a variety of clients as well as education here in EMEA. We're all having to look at things differently at the moment, so I'm excited to hear your questions, answer those, and go through those at the end. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Let's jump right in. The agenda for our webinar today is going to cover a few different topics. We're going to start by highlighting the value of communicating and engaging with students and your community members right now. I'll be leading you through a demonstration of Guidebook's updated virtual tours offering, both from the user experience and from the experience of building content on the back end. We'll wrap up today's webinar with a Q&A session. During the call, as you have questions, please don't hesitate to open up the chat feature and share those. My team will be gathering those so that we can get through that queue at the end of the call. Also, just briefly, a lot of this discussion will focus on one particular example of utilizing Guidebook's virtual tours in recruiting efforts for admissions and enrollment management. However, I hope that if that's not a department from which you're coming, you'll still be able to see the value in using this tool to message and communicate with other constituents, including alumni, parents and families, incoming students, faculty and staff, etc. Obviously, the major focus right now is safe and effective communication. It's more important than ever during these times. Even with the uncertainty of so many factors, budgets, government decisions, last-minute changes, it's still imperative that you can provide students and members of your community with a way to see themselves on campus. This group needs to feel comfortable and welcomed on campus and in the community. And you can provide them with a way to do that while also following protocols, safety regulations, and laws. The 3 main takeaways from this talk that I'd like for you to have are: 1, the Guidebook virtual tour provides a safe way for your audience and your staff to visualize your campus. 2, the Guidebook virtual tour allows you to share important resources and feelings on the device that your audience is already using. And 3, the Guidebook virtual tour will give you a long-term communication tool. So as you're approaching the inevitable change, you can use this tool to provide them with updated information. In just a moment, I'll be sharing a full demo of Guidebook's virtual tours and the backend system. However, prior to that, I think it's important to recognize the context of the Guidebook virtual tours option. I mentioned a moment ago my previous professional experience in enrollment management and undergraduate admissions. During my 6 years in the field, I gave thousands of tours and I attended thousands of tours. I also trained hundreds of student tour guides. When I came to Guidebook and was asked, how can admissions offices get more value out of our offering? Through a group discussion, we decided that it would be a great opportunity to provide campuses with a tour, even when an in-person tour was not available. Prior to the pandemic, these scenarios popped up almost every day on almost every campus in some way or another. Whether it was a visitor showing up outside of a scheduled tour time or on a weekend, maybe you had a visitor come who didn't have the opportunity to take a full 60 or 90-minute tour of your campus. And in those days, the best offering we had and the best offering that other programs that I interviewed around the country had was to hand our visitor a map and a list of a few places that they should check out for themselves. That's where the Guidebook virtual tour was born. How do we provide a more personalized experience for these individuals who need a way to feel comfortable walking around our campus? Obviously, with the recent times and the recent changes, the opportunity to provide that personal tour is very different and is much more common than it has been before. So today, we're going to look at what that looks like. I'm going to jump right into the Guidebook app and open up a guide that was built by Centre College in Kentucky. When Centre College reached out to Guidebook this spring, they listed a need for helping to recruit students for the current year, but also recognizing that they needed a longer-term tool because of the uncertainty of the pandemic. They were having families arrive to campus that needed a way to view and feel comfortable there without putting their student tour guides or their staff in danger. And they went forward with this great tour. What I love about the Guidebook virtual tour is that it is so simple, particularly this one. This guide opens right up to their virtual tour offering. Right on the top, we have a great overview image. We get some general information about what this experience is going to be like. We have a nice outline of the stops, a great welcome message, and then a list of the stops that we're going to be seeing along the way. Right down here, we're prompted to go ahead and begin the tour, and I think this brings up the first really important fact. The Guidebook virtual tour offering is ideal for two different scenarios. If you have an attendee who's physically on campus, the Guidebook virtual tour will walk them around each of these stops. If you have an audience member who's not able to physically be on your campus, the Guidebook virtual tour can provide them a visual example of walking around the campus as well. The only difference in selecting the yes, I'm here or the no, I'm remote option is that the yes, I'm here option enables GPS on the user's device. This simplifies their experience. As they get to each of the stops along the tour, they're automatically recognized as approaching, and the audio file for each of the stops will begin playing. Since I'm not currently in Danville, Kentucky, I'm going to select that I'm remote. Right away, it's taking us to the first stop, zooming us in and automatically opening us up to their first location. The first prompt lets me know how I'm going to be able to listen to the audio of this stop. I can either hold the phone up to my ear as if I'm talking on the phone, or I can listen through the speaker, or we've enabled Bluetooth capability, so a user can utilize headphones, whether wired or Bluetooth. Each of the stops that we're going to see, we'll see a few along the way, are going to have the same general structure. We get an opportunity at the top for up to 10 photos. And I recommend we include photos through all the seasons. Because if you think about it, when an attendee is touring a campus, they get to experience the campus in that moment, rain or shine. I also think it's important to highlight photos outside and inside, particularly in terms of residence halls. It's also not a bad idea when considering large facilities like athletic facilities or auditoriums to include photos outside and photos of the inside with an event going on. Down below the image, we see right here the audio file. Now, if we were on campus and utilizing GPS, this would have begun playing as we arrived at the stop. Since I'm remote, I'm going to click it and let it play. You won't be able to hear the audio through this demo, but you can see a visual example as this yellow bar goes along. Each of the stops has an audio recording synced with it, and these recordings were completed by individuals of the Center College community. I'll get more into that in just a little while. Down below, we've got a nice text box description here of our location. It's not a requirement that the text description match verbatim the audio file. However, I believe it's a good best practice to do so. Another key important factor to include about this text description is video capability. If you have a hosted video link that you would like to provide at each of your stops, you can include that link within the text description box. If a user were to click on that link, it opens up a new window within the guide for them to view that video. Once the video is over and a user is done with it, they are taken right back to this screen. They're not opening up a new browser, and they're not being taken to a different spot. They're right back where they left off. As we complete this location, I'm going to say, let's go ahead to the next destination. Again, if we were utilizing GPS, there would be a little dotted line that I could follow to get there. And as I arrived at the next location, the audio would begin to play. New stop, new images, new audio file, new text. Similar structure. One of the new features we added recently gives users the ability to skip around to stops. Right up here from this drop-down menu, we can see all the stops on our tour. I'm going to skip ahead to the final stop. As I get there and I'm prompted, similar structure, but at the bottom, now it's saying finish tour. At the end of your tour, you can provide action items for your audience. This is a great way to capture a little bit of information, either linking them to a survey within the guide or completing the process that Center College did here, where they're linking directly to an existing inquiry form hosted online. When a user fills out this information and submits it, it goes directly into their management system. The important thing to keep in mind, if you look at the top, we still have our guide header. It's because we were never taken out of the guide. That's the campus virtual tour, but that's not the only part. If you're already familiar with Guidebook, then you're familiar with our vast suite of features. And Center College did a really great job of building a lot of these in. The most important aspect, I believe, in building a good virtual tour is letting your audience feel like they're getting a personal experience. I mentioned a moment ago that Center College had members of their community record the audio files for those stops. Their idea was to have 5 of their best student tour guides provide those audio files. Personally, and from my experience, I think that was a genius move. If you think about your student tour guides and the experience that they provide, each one of those tours is very different and very unique. Regardless of how much training or what scripts they use, they are putting their own twist on their tour. And that's a great thing because each of the individuals touring your campus have their experience to bring as well. What Center did was they used 5 of those tour guides, and then they provided a custom list where we can meet who those tour guides are. So let's jump in. If we see Hannah here, here's a brief bio of Hannah. If we're thinking about really connecting with prospective students and families, giving them an opportunity to see who these students are is a great way to do that. Another really important aspect that I want to point out is that this guide currently has one virtual tour feature built into it, and that's the Center College Campus Tour. However, Guidebooks Virtual Tours offering can host multiple virtual tours within the same guide. So if we think about that theme from a moment ago of providing your audience with a more personalized feel, we can think about other virtual tours that would be really beneficial. Maybe we think about particular interest groups. What if we had a virtual tour with the audio provided by a student athlete sharing their experience as a student athlete at your campus? Maybe we have a virtual tour of an alumnus sharing their experience back on campus. Maybe we have a tour provided by a Spanish-speaking student sharing their experience in their native language. Maybe we have a tour provided by a first-gen student or a STEM student where they're sharing their unique experiences as well. What we're doing is we're allowing our audience the opportunity to select the tour that most similarly matches their needs. And that's not something they can even do in a personal tour. One of the other factors that I traditionally recommended to my student tour guides was to recognize that there was so much more to our university experience than just the buildings and programs within our gates. It was also important, equally if not more so, to highlight the experiences of our community around us. In doing so, Center College took that idea and they've built in a list of local favorites. These are restaurants in the Danville, Kentucky area where they've provided a little bit of information and turn-by-turn directions, offering users the ability to find restaurants or local hotels or local hotspots and ways to get there. Similarly, they wanted their audience to get to know the area, not just the restaurants. So they've built in a custom list called Get to Know Danville, Kentucky, where they include some other aspects that make their community unique. I think this is a really, really great way to help a prospective student feel comfortable knowing about the area that they're considering. The other content down below, again, if you're familiar with Guidebook, you're probably recognizing these, but it's just important to recognize that not only would you get a virtual tour option, you also get the full suite of features available. So building in a guide like this can become a tool that you utilize to message your audience with important updates, changes, dates, deadlines. It's also a way for your audience to, on their own time, explore your department, your team, and your university a little more. That's the end user experience, but I'd like to briefly show you how that content is built in for the tour. What we're looking at here is our backend system known as Guidebook Builder. Over on the left side, we have that feature menu where we can build in various features from our suite. And right at the top, here's the campus tour. Just briefly to show you how simple this is to put together. New stops are added by clicking Add New Stop, where you would drag and drop a pin for each location. Each of those stops shows up on this list below, where they can be edited further with a title for the stop, a location where you can upload those up to 10 images, the text description for each of the stops. Here's a good example also. They've included a hyperlink to a hosted video for one of their performances. And then below, here is exactly where those audio files can be recorded within the guide. If we go back to the basics, here's the campus tour name. There's the header image that we have. Center College used that nice overhead shot. Here's that brief welcome message description. And then here's where you design out your concluding message and select your action items. So that was a brief demo of our Guidebook virtual tours. For a more tailored demo to suit your specific needs, particularly if your department is not focused on recruiting, but you're interested in learning more about how a guide can support and provide value for your programming, please reach out to us via the email below. For now, I'm going to hand it back to my colleague, Connor, who's going to help us with the Q&A session.
Thanks, Patrick. All right, so we'll get started on everyone's questions here. So to start off, we'll head it to Jack. So for small private schools that are able to provide small tours at flexible times, how is Guidebook being used to supplement rather than replace or compete with those personal tours?
Yeah, it's a good question. We would say that the audio tour isn't meant to compete with personal tours by student ambassadors or by professionals. We see it as something that is in addition to, because it's more of a personal experience. So mobile phone, you're going to take yourself around the campus on the tour that you've created, rather than being in a group. So at the moment, you can either do that completely on your own and be in control of social distancing as needed, or you can take it virtually. But we would say that, and clients that have used this in the past will have the group tours, and then we'll have the audio tour as a separate thing, so that people who can't make a specific time, want to just turn up and take themselves around campus on their own time, or indeed can only take it from their home. They can use the mobile version for that. But when you have those great large tour groups, we would say that you would use those. People could always use the tour at the same time just to get more information. But we would say if you're running a tour with a professional, with a student ambassador, that they just run it themselves.
Great. And another one for you, Jack. So during the demo, Patrick was mentioning the limit of photos per destination. Is that 10 photos per destination?
Yeah, so you can include up to 10 photos per destination. You can click on the photo and then scroll through just like you would scroll through photos on a normal photo app. You can, what we would say is including external and internal photos, showing the stop in different seasons, etc., so that your users get a good description of the place they're looking at, especially for your virtual visitors.
And then Patrick, this one's for you. So with guidance in the UK and Scotland discouraging in-person events as much as possible, is there a way to only have remote tours so the option is, yes, I'm there, doesn't appear?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There currently is not an option to remove the yes, I'm here button. However, if we're focusing on an audience that's not going to be able to physically be there, that leads me to believe that we would have the capability to promote to them. So you would just be very clear in your messaging in sharing the link for downloading the virtual tour, that a user could open the tour and select the remote option. All that to say, as current events are changing daily, our product team is more open than ever to receiving feedback for future iterations. So we'll definitely keep that in consideration.
All right, and back to you, Jack. So are you only able to upload photos? Is there an option to upload short video clips?
So we don't allow the native upload of a video, just because the size of videos can end up being really big. And obviously on a tour, you're probably expecting your users to be using their mobile data rather than Wi-Fi. What you can do though is you can link to a video that's online, so then they can stream the video if they need to. So it works in a very similar way, and it will open up within the app. So for the user, it'll feel like a good end-to-end experience, but we don't natively upload videos, just the photos.
Great. All right, Patrick, is the tour complete page different for virtual or in person? Would a college have that capability?
Yeah, so the tour complete page, that call to action, would be the same for virtual and in person. However, there is the option to have two calls to action with two buttons. So if you had two different forms, for example, you could send the students to either the button for the virtual tour or the button for the in-person tour.
Great. All right, and then another one for you, Patrick. Is this compatible with Slate?
Yeah, that's a really great question, especially as Slate has been garnering more and more of a foothold in enrollment management. We do not have currently have a specific integration. However, I'm familiar with Slate's current offering, and while we don't have anything at the moment, I can definitely see some value in a future iteration.
All right, moving over to Jack now. Is it possible to have multiple tour versions, maybe based on majors or undergrads and graduate students?
Yes, so you can have multiple tours within one guide. If you purchase a tour guide, you just need to speak to your account manager to get this set up. We have to add those tours in on the staff side. We also got the question, can we have tours in multiple languages? And the answer again is yes. You would just have two tours set up. They can be the same route, but then you just need to upload the language audio file and language text that you need into that second file. If you want a good example of this, you can download the University of Swansea's app from the App Store, Google Play Store. They have multiple languages in their audio tour. So a nice plug for Swansea University there. They have multiple languages, so you can take a look at theirs and see their multiple tours.
Right. All right, Patrick. So in the audio, do you recommend walking people through the inside of the building? On your left is this, etc. or keeping it more general?
Yeah, wow. This brings back a lot of memories of a lot of tours. Honestly, it's up to you, and I think everyone's going to do this a little bit differently. If there's particular information within the building that you think is relevant to your tour experience, then absolutely share that. You know, for example, if there's a historic aspect to a building, then you should definitely highlight or provide some description of what you would see in there. Along with that, it would be great to include a photo of that as well. So maybe in your audio file, you would say, just inside the front door on the left, you would see former President so-and-so's desk. You can see that desk in the images for this stop above. So giving your users a little bit of an audio cue and recommending that they check out the images as well.
Perfect. All right, Jack, we've got a few coming up for you. So in the description section of each tour stop, should there be more information beyond the audio script?
Yeah, good question. And it's up to you. Basically, if you're including a video link, you probably would mention the video in the audio. There may be other information like that included in your audio file. So it's basically completely up to you, the way that you want to describe in the audio, or if you want to describe in the text. We would say, if I was advising you on this, I would say to put as much information as possible into the guide. And that also caters to lots of different users. They may want to read more than listen. So basically put as much information as you possibly can in and make it easy to view. So have bullet points and lay it out in an easy way.
And is Guidebook and this feature available for download by international students when they're at home in their countries?
Exactly. Yeah, you can download Guidebook or our branded apps anywhere that the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store work. So if you have international students who you want to share this with, they can download it as long as they can access the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store.
Great. Is there a way to add more than one audio file for each stop?
No, each stop can only have one audio file at the moment. This may change if we see a high demand for this kind of question. You can obviously use the description, as I mentioned, and also link to other information. But the way the tool works, it will just have the one audio file.
All right. Now back to you, Patrick. I've used Guidebook for events and conferences. How does this pricing differ when it's an ongoing product? Is there an additional cost per tour type?
Yeah, that's another good question. So Guidebook Tours is actually recognized as a different tool separate from what a traditional guide is. So the pricing is a little bit different. I would recommend that you reach out to us to schedule a personalized call on that. If you're an existing user, you can reach out to your account manager, or if not, contacting sales@guidebook.com would be the best first step to schedule that.
Great, thank you. And this for you, Jack. I'm just wondering, will prospective students who come to the campus and want to use Guidebook for virtual tour, will they need to download the Guidebook app?
So yes and no. So they'll need to download the app where you host the guide, the audio guide. So if you have a branded app for your university or your use case, then your users would download your specific branded app. If you're using the Guidebook app, then they'll have to download the Guidebook app. So it's just where you host it. But the answer, yes, they will have to download an app that the audio tour is placed on, but it depends which one. So yeah, if they turn up to the campus and they want to use the tour, they'll just need to download the app that it's hosted on.
Great. All right, Patrick, this one's for you. So we'd like to stagger our tour starting points for families when they have more than one family on the tour at once for social distancing reasons. Is that possible?
Wow, another great question. And I've had a lot of conversations with programs all over the country, and I have not heard of this structure. So bravo for that idea. I think that's really great. I would recommend, since a user can skip ahead to different positions, different stops on the tour, I would recommend that you just let them know, skip ahead to a particular destination from where they can go. And I wanted to pull it up. So, you may have family 1 begin at stop 1. You may tell family 2 to begin at stop 2 and then work their way around the tour. Again, great question though.
And then back to you, Patrick. For audio or video files, is there a length or size limit?
There is, yes, and that's 20 megabytes.
Great. All right. Now, Jack, are there limits to how many tour stops you can have?
You can add as many tour stops as you like. You'll just want to consider the length of time of the tour. So depending on how big your campus is, you may want to have lots of stops. You also might want to break them down into like a different kind of track. So maybe accommodation or academic buildings. If you do have a huge campus, that's a great way to make bite-sized tours. Some universities also have things like athletics tours or even running tours. So the stops are slightly further apart so that people can run between them.
Great. All right, and Patrick, can the app save individual locations without being tied to a tour?
It can, yes. So utilizing some existing features on traditional guides, we can have our Google Maps feature that can be added to the guide separately and can provide locations. I mean, you could tag that along with an existing custom list for each of those locations too.
Great. All right, Jack, do you have indoor schools using Guidebook? My campus is all indoors with the exception of one building. I'm wondering how an indoor campus using Guidebook differs from a tour being led outdoors, mainly with the stops.
So basically what we do when you create a tour is you build it on top of Google Maps. So we do rely on basically anything that's mapped on Google Maps will be accessible on a tour. We have some universities for example, in London have lots of indoor buildings, but they're mapped out on Google Maps. So you can actually take the tour through the buildings. So it depends on if your campus is lucky enough to have been mapped out with Google. What I would say is when you're looking at your tour is to get in touch with the representative from Guidebook and discuss this with them. We can send examples over of indoor campuses or campuses with indoor tours, and you can take a look. But also you can obviously just have a look at your campus on Google Maps and see how detailed the indoor sections are on Google Maps.
Great. All right, Patrick, is there an option to add subtitles or a transcript in addition to the bio for each stop?
Yeah, at the moment, there is not a specific location to add the transcript of the audio tour. However, I would recommend as a best practice utilizing the description field of each of the stops to your benefit. In fact, most schools, particularly considering accessibility, will utilize the description field as the place to share what is being said verbatim in the audio tour.
Okay. And then, Jack, how many pictures would you recommend adding to a destination?
I'd recommend adding as many as you possibly can. As I said earlier, you can add up to 10. And a picture says 1,000 words. So add as many as you possibly can into each stop.
Got it. No problem. And then is the tour feature included in the overall guidebook system, or is it an add-on?
Yeah, good question. It's good for us to think about this kind of thing. So basically the tours feature a specific type of guide. So you do need a specific guide with the tours feature in. You are able to upgrade a current premium guide. So a full plan guide to the tours guide. You would just need to talk to your account manager or reach out to sales@guidebook.com.
All right, Patrick, is there a limit to the length of the audio file?
Yeah, so the limit is actually based on the file size, not on the specific time duration. So the limit to the audio file size is 20 megabyte MP3 file.
Back to you, Jack. Can you have multiple tours on the same guidebook app for multi-site universities?
Absolutely. So the same as the multiple language question here. You can have as many tours currently for no add-on cost in the same tour guide. So if you have one university of multiple campuses, you can have as many tours in one guide as you like.
Got it. Okay. And then Patrick, is there a version where visiting families can build their own tour within the app, similar to how institutions can build the tour?
There's not currently a way for them to build the tour. However, that was the origin of that new structure, allowing users the ability to skip around. So again, thinking back on my experience, it was common for an in-person tour, if it was an individual or just a single family, to make specific requests of locations they would like to see. And so that skipping feature gives users that ability to pick and choose those stops that pertain to their particular interests.
Great. All right, so it looks like we're coming up on our last question here for Jack. Is it functionality available for all guidebooks free, or do we have to pay extra?
Yeah, you have to pay extra for the tours. Depending on what kind of plan you have already. If you're upgrading, it will be a different cost. So if you already have a plan with Guidebook, please get in touch with your account manager. If you are new to Guidebook, then get in touch with that email address I mentioned earlier, which is sales@guidebook.com, and we can go through the pricing with you.
Great. So yeah, that looks like we don't have any other questions coming in at the moment. So thanks again for everyone joining. We'll be sending you some follow-up information probably tomorrow, along with the recording and the Q&A questions as well. If you have any other follow-up, feel free to submit a demo request or reach out to sales@guidebook.com.